Hello, Brobs. We're back with Woman Under Socialism from the German of August Bebel, whatever it is, by Daniel de Leon. I believe we're in chapter 1, which is a very long chapter from what I recall. Part 1, Woman in the Past. This chapter is about 70-some pages. As you can see, the font is small as hell. Chapter 1, Before Christianity. Woman and the working men have, since old, had this in common: oppression. The forms of oppression have suffered changes in the course of time and in various countries, but the oppression always remained. Many a time and oft is the course of the ages did the oppressed become conscious of their oppression, and such conscious knowledge of their condition did bring on changes and reliefs. Nevertheless, a knowledge that grasped the actual feature of the oppression by grasping its causes is, with woman as with the working man, the fruit of our own days. The actual feature of society and of the laws that lie at the bottom of its development had first to be known before a general movement and take place for the removal of conditions recognized as oppressive and unjust. The breadth and intensity of such a movement depends, however, upon the measure of the understanding prevalent among the suffering social layers and circles, and upon the measure of freedom of motion that they enjoy. In both respects, woman stands, through custom and education, as well as the freedom allowed her by law, behind the working man. To this, another circumstance is added. Conditions lasting through a long series of generations finally grow in the custom. Heredity and education then cause such conditions to appear on both sides as natural. Hence it comes that, even today, woman in particular accepts her subordinate position as a matter of course. It is no easy matter to make her understand that this position is unworthy, and that it is her duty to endeavor to become a member of society, equal-righted with, and in every sense, a peer of man. However much in common woman may be shown to have with the working man, she leads him in one thing. Woman was the first human being to come into bondage. She was a slave before the male slave existed. Something tells me that's probably not true. All social dependence and oppression has its roots in the economic dependence of the oppressed upon the oppressor. In this condition, woman finds herself from an early day down to our own. The history of the development of human society proves the fact everywhere. The knowledge of the history of this development is, however, comparatively new. As little as the myth of the creation of the world, as taught us by the Bible, can be upheld in sight of the investigations of geographers and scientists, grounded as those investigations are upon unquestionable and innumerable facts. Just so untenable has its myth proved concerning the creation and evolution of man. True enough, as yet the veil is far from being lifted from all the sub-departments of this historical development of mankind, over many on which already light has been shed. Differences of opinion still exist among the investigators on the meaning and connection of this or that fact. Nevertheless, on the whole, there is agreement and clearness. It is established that man did not, like the first human couple of the Bible, make his first appearance on earth in an advanced stage of civilization. He reached that plane only in the course of endlessly long lapses of time, after he had gradually freed himself from purely animal conditions and had experienced long terms of development in the course of which his social as well as his sexual relations, the relations between man and woman, had undergone a great variety of changes. The favorite phrase, a phrase that the ignorant or impostors daily smite our ears with on the subject of the relations between man and woman, and between the poor and the rich, it always has been so, and the conclusion drawn therefrom, it will always be so, is in every sense of the word false, superficial, and trumped up. For the purposes of this work, a cursory presentation of the relations between the sexes since primitive society is of special importance. It is so because it can thereby be proved that, seeing that these relations have materially changed in the previous course of human development, and that the changes have taken place in even step with the existing systems of production, on the other, it is natural and goes without saying that, along with further changes and revolutions in the system of production and distribution, the relations between the sexes are bound to change again. Nothing is eternal, either in nature or in human life. Eternal only is change and interchange. As far back as one may go in the development of human society, the horde is found as the first human community. True enough, Honegger mentions in his general history of civilization that even today, in the little explored interior of the island of Borneo, there are wild people living separately. And Hugo likewise maintains that in the wild mountain regions of India, human couples have been discovered living alone, and who, ape-like, fled to the trees as soon as they were met. But there is no further knowledge on the subject. If verified, these claims would only confirm the previous superstition and hypothesis concerning the development of the human race. The probability is that wherever human beings sprang up, there were at first single couples. Certain it is, however, that so soon as a larger number of beings existed, descended from a common parent stock, they held together in hordes in order that, by their joint efforts, they might, first of all, gain their still very primitive conditions of life and support, as well as to protect themselves against their common enemies, wild animals, growing numbers, and increased difficulties in securing subsistence, which originally consisted in roots, berries, and fruit, first led to the splitting up or segmentation of the hordes, and to the search for new habitats. This almost animal-like state, of which we have no further credible antiquarian proofs, undoubtedly once existed, judging from all that we have learned concerning the several grades of civilization of wild peoples still living or known to have lived within historic times. Men did not, upon the call of a creator, step ready-made into existence as a higher product of civilization. It was otherwise. He has had to pass through the most varied stages in an endlessly long and slow process of development. Only via ebbing and flowing periods of civilization and in constant differentiation with his fellows in all parts of the world and in all zones did he gradually climb up to his present height. Indeed, while in one section of the earth's surface great peoples and nations belong to the most advanced stages of civilization, other people are found in different sections standing on the greatest variety of gradations in development. They thus present to us a picture of our own past history, and they point to the road which mankind traversed in the course of its development. If but certain common and generally accepted data are established that may serve everywhere as signposts to guide investigation, a mass of facts will follow, throwing a wholly new light upon the relations of man in the past and the present. A number of social phenomena unintelligible to us today and attacked by superficial judges as nonsensical, not infrequently even as immoral, will become clear and natural, a material lifting of the veil formally spread over the history of the development of our race, has been affected through the investigations made since Bachofen by a considerable number of scientists like Taylor, McLennan, Lubeck, and others. Prominently among the men who joined these was Morgan, with his fundamental work that Frederick Engels further substantiated and supplemented with a series of historical facts, economic and political in their nature, and that more recently has been partly confirmed and partly rectified by Kuhnau. I mean, as if the font could get any smaller here. Bachofen's book appeared in 1861 under the title Das Mutterrecht, Mother Right, Ein Untersuchung über die Geistesgeschichte der allen Welt. Whatever the hell that says. Morgan's fundamental work, Ancient Society, appeared in a German translation in 1891. J.H.W. Dietz, Stuttgart, from the same publisher, there appeared in German. The Origin of the Family of Private Property and the State to Support of Louis H. Morgan's Investigations by Frederick Engels. Fourth, enlarged edition, blah, blah, blah. The perspective into which the Pleiades of distinguished names are thrown in the text just above is apt to convey an incorrect impression, and the impression is not materially corrected in the subsequent references to them. Neither Bachofen nor yet Taylor, McLennan, or Lubeck contributed. Okay. Dude, this footnote is unbelievable. To the principles that now are canons in ethnology. They were not even pathfinders, valuable though their words are. Bachofen collected in the work entitled Das Mutterrecht the gleanings of vast and tireless researches among the writings of the ancients with an eye to female authority. Subsequently, in helping themselves more particularly to the more recent contributions to archaeology that partly deal with living aborigines, Taylor, McLennan, and Lubeck produced, respectively, Early History of Mankind, Primitive Marriage in Prehistoric Times, and Origin of Civilization. These works, though partly theoretic, yet are mainly descriptive, by an effort of genius like the woodpecker, whose instinct tells it the desired worm is beneath the bark and who pecks at and around about. All these men, Bachofen foremost, scented sense in the seeming nonsense of ancient traditions, or surmised significance in the more recently ascertained customs of living aborigines. But again, like the woodpecker that has struck a bark too thick for its bill, these men could not solve the problem they were at. They lacked the information to pick, and they had not, nor were they so situated as to furnish themselves with the key to open the lock. Morgan furnishes the key. Louis Henry Morgan, born in Aurora, New York, November 21st, 1818, and equipped with vast scholarship and archaeological information, took up his residence among the Iroquois Indians, by whom the Hawk Gens, of the Seneca tribe, he was eventually adopted, the fruit of his observations there, and among other Indian tribes that he visited, even west of the missionaries in the Sandwich Islands, was a series of epoch-making works. The League of the Iroquois, Systems of Consanguinity and Affinity of the Human Family, and Ancient Society, which appeared in 1877. A last and not least valuable work was his Houses and House Life of the American Aborigines. A solid foundation was now laid for the science of ethnology and anthropology. The problem was substantially solved. The robust scientific mind of Karl Marx promptly absorbed the revelations made by Morgan and he recast his own views accordingly. A serious ethnological error had crept into his great work, Capital, two editions of which had been previously published in German between 1863 and 73. A footnote by Frederick Ingalls, page 344, Swan, blah, 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 testifies to the revolution Morgan's work had wrought on the ethnological conception of the founder of socialist economics and sociology. Subsequently, Frederick Ingalls, planted squarely on the principles established by Morgan, issued a series of brilliant monographs in which, equipped with the key furnished by Morgan, in which Ingalls' extensive economic and sociological knowledge enabled him to wield with defense, he explained interesting social phenomena among the ancients and thereby greatly enriched the literature of social science. Finally, Heinrich Kuhnau, though imagining to perceive some minor flaws in some secondary parts of Morgan's theory, placed himself in absolute accord with the body of Morgan's real work, as stated later in the text. In a quotation from Kuhnau, and following closely in Morgan's footsteps, made and published interesting independent researches on the system of consanguinity among the Austral Negroes, the translator. My God, that footnote literally contributed nothing to what was being said. And it's not only that, but its text is so small. By means of these expositions, especially as clearly and lucidly presented by Frederick Ingalls, in his support of Morgan's excellent and fundamental work, a massive light is shed upon hitherto unintelligible, partly seemingly contradictory phenomena in the life of the races and tribes of both high and low degree of culture. Only now do we gain an insight into the structure that human society raised in the course of time. According thereto, our former views of marriage, the family, the community, the state, rested upon notions that were wholly false. So false that they turn out to be no better than a fancy picture, wholly devoid of foundation in fact. All that is said and proved about marriage, the family, the community, and the state holds good, especially with regard to woman, who, in the various periods of development, did likewise fill a place that differs materially from the eternal imputed to her. Morgan, whom Ingalls agrees with in this, divides the history of mankind into three main epochs: savagery, barbarism, and civilization. Each of the first ones he again divides into an under, a middle, and an upper period, each distinguishing itself from the other by certain innovations and improvements, predicated in each instance upon the control over subsistence. Morgan, accordingly, exactly in the sense of the materialistic conception of history, as established by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, perceives the leading characteristics in the development of society to be the changes that, in given epochs, the conditions of life are molded into, and he perceives the changes to be due for the progress, I assume that's for the progress made in the process of production. That is to say, in the procurement of subsistence. Summed up in a few words, the lower period of savagery constitutes the infancy of the human race, during which the race, partly living in trees, is mainly nourished by fruits and roots, and during which articulate language takes its inception. The middle period of savagery commences with the acquisition of a fish subsistence and the use of fire. The construction of weapons begins. At first, the club and spear, fashioned out of wood and stone, thereby also begins the chase, and probably also war with contiguous hordes for the sources of food, for domiciles and hunting grounds. At this stage appears also cannibalism, still practiced today by some tribes and peoples of Africa, Australia, and Polynesia. The upper period of savagery is characterized by the perfection of weapons to the point of the bow and arrow, finger weaving, the making of baskets to the point, or making of baskets out of filaments of bark, the fashioning of sharpened stone tools have here their start, and thereby begins also the preparation of wood for the building of boats and huts. The form of life has, what the hell does that say? Accordingly, become many sided. The existing tools and implements needed for the control of plentiful food supply make possible the subsistence of large communities. The lower period of barbarism, Morgan starts with the invention of the art of pottery. I thought he was going to say poetry. I would say that makes sense. The taming and domestication of animals, and along with that, the production of meat and milk, and the preparation of hides, horns, and hair for various purposes of use, have here their start. Hand in hand therewith begins the cultivation of plants in the west of maize, in the east of almost all known cereals, maize excepted. The middle period of barbarism shows us in the east the ever more extensive domestication of animals. In the west, the cultivation of maize and plants by irrigation. Here also begins the use of adobe bricks and stone for house building. The domestication of animals promotes the rearing of herds and leads to the pastoral life. The necessity of larger quantities of food for men and beasts leads to field agriculture. Along therewith, the people begin to be localized. Food increases in quality and diversity, and gradually cannibalism disappears. So does my will to read this small font. I'm at 22-minute mark anyways. My God, there's no way I can make it through this book with this font. 300 pages with that font. My God, it's a fucking... Talk about a class struggle. Struggling to fucking not go blind here. All right, goodbye, bros. Goodbye.